Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me tonight for our live stream as we talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars salary cap situation and some of the other key questions surrounding the team. So, how are y'all doing today? Let me know in the comments. I try to start this a few minutes early when we do these so it gives people time to hop in here because I know it takes a little bit. So, definitely let me know what's up. We should have a lot of time as well to really talk about anything else you guys want to. Could be regarding the draft, could be regarding the upcoming season, expectations, really any topic. So if you're interested, definitely let me know. I'm definitely down to talk about all that kind of stuff. But the main topic I will hit tonight, we do want to talk about the salary cap. That's been something I've seen a bit of confusion on. I've seen people saying we have the whole $10 million available for free agents, or we have to spend the whole $10 million on draft selections and all these different stances that people have, or not stances, but more so just basically not understanding the amount of money available and the situation. So I definitely want to clear that up, explain how that works for you guys, and bring some light to the situation and really what they can do at this point, because I don't think that free agency is over for this team. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And like I said, if you guys got any questions or any topics, just throw them in the chat. I'll definitely try to make sure I'm following that as we go. I'm going to pull that up on my phone, actually, so I can see if anyone's commenting. So I'm going to do that here real quick. Out of curiosity, do we have any baseball fans in here? Because obviously that's getting started. We just had the first games yesterday. I am cursed because I'm a Kansas City Royals fan, so it's pretty rough on that side of things for sure. Almost got this pulled up here. Alright, there we go. So let me get swapped over. We'll be looking at over the cap tonight. So I've got a couple pages up here that we're going to look through, probably pull up some other stuff too. So the first one I've got is the breakdown of the cap, the numbers for all the players, the amount available, future projections based off our current contracts, and then also have a tab up for the draft resources that will help us explain really how the cap's going to change after the draft. So I see we got a comment from Ben Summer saying, once you assume that they would revisit free agency after the draft, doesn't look like they want to lose the comp picks. I could definitely see them doing it after the draft. And I think especially when you consider the positions that there are to address at this point, or that they really can do anything about in free agency, I think it's a position that you can hit late in the offseason because there's usually players available there. And the one I'm talking about is really anything regarding the pass rush. Mainly these 3-4 outside linebackers or defensive ends. You see these guys get signed really late. And so I think they could address that after the draft. As far as comp picks, though, I'm not sure it impacts that. I think that's just essentially the whole offseason, anything they do. And we can actually take a look at that here. As I'm pulling that up, see that Billy's a Braves fan. How are they doing? Are they having a good year? Because I honestly haven't checked. I mean, they got to be better than the Royals. I know that for sure. Because the Royals are just a disappointment. I mean, they are really bad. So I am going to go to a game on Monday, I think. So that should be fun. I get to watch them lose a lot in person, so it's really thrilling, for me as a fan, just to see the same thing over and over. A team that, quite frankly, cannot score for its life. I mean that all sarcastically, obviously, but fun times. So looking at compensatory picks here, right now, 2 of their picks here are not going to be essentially given as compensation. There's no compensation being given to the team because there's a limit of 32 selections that end up being awarded to the teams. And so Jacksonville is the top one from Jawan Taylor. And then they've also got Arden Key, which is still there as a 6th rounder. That's likely where it stays. And the other guys you see, Marvin Jones is off this. He did not get paid enough to where he was a comp pick. And I was kind of shocked at the amount he got. I mean, I think like at $3 million, he should have been back on this team. But, you know, if they want to save their money, they want to save their money. And there's things that they can do in the draft to address it. I think like Xavier Hutchinson's probably the perfect guy to go after as far as replacing what Marvin Jones did for the team. There may be better receivers overall, but as far as like just considering the value and where you got to select him and trying to replace what Marvin gave to the team, he's probably the most realistic. So, you know, that was kind of shocking. I would have expected a late comp pick, which, I mean, we're talking about the last picks of the 7th round, like Mr. Irrelevant sort of picks. And then Chris Manhertz, he did not get enough either. So, yeah. And yeah, I think that $3.5 million mark is probably actually about where it is. Because, I mean, I'm sure if we look at like what Dan Feeney got, it's around there. Yeah, almost $3.5 million. So that's kind of their situation right now. As far as I understand it, if they signed 2 free agents around these numbers, I think it wouldn't impact the comp picks. As far as I understand it. If they go over $3 million, it might. But quite frankly, with the late 6th, I wouldn't worry about that if you lose it. I think the really important thing is holding on to that 3rd. Like, you don't want to go sign, 4 guys or something like that and have like some of them be, a lot of money each year. Because for one, I don't think that they have that kind of money to spend, but you don't want to impact that Jawan Taylor compensatory pick because right now that's the 97th pick in the draft. That's a really good selection. So they got to make sure that stays there. So, I mean, I think we'll see them probably bring in edge rushers after the draft, or you could see right before, like DeJuan Smoot could get done then. But I also don't know if there's a market for him just because I'm not sure that other teams are going to be as familiar as Jacksonville is with the injury history or just really everything that's happened since he tore his Achilles. Because I think Jacksonville will have an advantage. Plus, Smoot wants to play here. So that is definitely going to impact that a bit. I do expect him to be back. And they did talk about the team being interested in him still. So hopefully DeJuan Smoot's back with this team because that does a lot for you. So let's go ahead here and start kind of going through this. And I want to sort of explain how we can see the salary cap change with like deals that could come up. So we're going to project a lot of contracts. Probably won't have the exact amounts that players are getting paid, but we're going to get kind of close. And so I think this should explain like why they really didn't do much this offseason, why this is a move for the future in terms of how they approached free agency this year. I think it should help to explain a lot. So right now, $10 million currently available in cap space. This factors in the top 51 players on the roster. Those are the ones who count against it. Now you carry 53 into games, and then you have 5 who are inactive, but the last 2 of that 53 do not count against the cap. So your number right now is 10 million, almost 10 million flat under the cap space. Now this is how it changes. And we'll go back to the website I had up here. So this right here, it shows the team, the rookie pool, and the cap space. So the rookie pool is the amount of money that the rookie class costs. That is not the amount of money that the salary cap changes by. Because when you're bringing in rookies, you're also replacing old contracts or guys who would just be relegated to a practice squad or go to another team. So what you have essentially for your changing cap space is you have the rookie pool minus the contracts you're shedding from if this year it would be the 9 players that are replaced. So for the Jaguars, their rookie pool is almost 9.9 million. The exact number is $9,861,228. The cap space change is around 3.1 million because the amount of money that they're saving from shedding those other contracts, if I do the mental math here, it would be what, 6,750,000 flat. So that's the amount of money they save from moving on from those players. And hey, Ron, how are you doing? Glad to see you in here. It wouldn't be a Cardiac Cast live stream if you weren't here, that's for sure. So appreciate you joining. Appreciate you all being here. We got 10 people in here, so it's a good group here, especially for the off season being pretty dead right now. So that's how the cap's going to change. So what we'll actually see as of now for the effective cap space they can spend is going to be about $6.9 million. That's what they have available. If they sign players to long-term contracts, that is anything over a year, then they can backload that. They will probably backload it. And you'll see the amount of cap hit be less than the average per year. So if they're signing players to longer contracts, they can make it work. I think you could even, say it's possible for the team to not have to restructure any other players and go pursue someone in a trade. Like if they wanted to bring in, say, Zadarius Smith, they could actually go do that with the cap space they have right now. Now you would have a big cap hit probably next year, or it would be next year and the future year, depending on if they signed a new contract, what they did. But they do have that kind of money available. I think something interesting to talk about here too. We heard a lot of news on the same day last week. So we heard the Jaguars were interested in Calais Campbell. Unfortunately, that did not work out. But right before we heard that, the Jaguars freed up some cap space. And so I think they did that to pursue Calais Campbell, most likely. But they've got a little bit extra to work with now because of that. I'm not sure if they spend it. I think they could spend a little bit. I think what we see is probably that money going into some edge rushers. So it'll probably be Dewan Smoot. Maybe Dan Arnold comes back. There's a chance that happens. Not too sure about it. And then I think they're going to go find someone outside of the team to bring in that's a veteran. And so you guys, if you watch this at all, if you watch really any of my videos, you know the guy that I like and I want the team to bring in, that's Justin Houston, because I think it's the best bang for your buck. I think you can get a ton of production out of him for the amount you're paying him. So he'll be one of the guys that I'll factor in as an example. And you could really put another name there too if you want. We'll look at some of the options. But that's your cap space you're working with. $6.9 million. Now Marvin Jones, he's gone. He went back to Detroit. Corey Peters is retired. I don't know if it's official, but that's what he said he was going to do. And then you've also got Darrell Henderson, who didn't even play a snap with the team. So quite frankly, I don't even know why he's on the list. So Smoot and Arnold are your only guys left that you had on the team last year that are currently unsigned. They haven't gone anywhere. So with Dewan Smoot, well, I want to lock him up long term. I don't think it's an option for the team because you have the injury from last year. It's going to bring into question how much production he's going to have this year. Is he going to be the same player? I don't think Dewan Smoot wants to sign after that to a long-term deal because for him, I mean, if he could get a good amount, then yeah, sign it. But the Jaguars would probably be paying him around the same amount, and I believe he was right on track to outperform his contract. I think there was a chance he was going to do that. You look at his stats, there were still games left in the year, but look at his sacks. He was already up to 5. He was heating up around that time. He was arguably the best pass rusher for some of those games late in the year. So I think for him and the team, what makes the most sense is to sign a 1-year deal. It's going to be cheap. It's just the nature of it because there's not really going to be other competitors for him as I understand things right now. And he's coming off an injury where you don't know for sure that he's going to be playing in week 1 of this next season. Now, I believe he will, based off of what happened to James Robinson last year, a similar time that they both got injured. It's the same injury, and Robinson was ready to go, I think a few weeks before the season. So I think you see something similar with Smoot. Not that it necessarily will go exactly that way. That's my expectation, though. So I think for him, if I had to estimate a contract, probably talking about maybe $2.5 million this year. We won't mess with like signing bonus or any of that. They would do something specific, I'm sure, but the point is it's $2.5 million against the cap. So you're probably getting him on a 1-year deal. And then with Dan Arnold, I think he's walking with the team. I think he's going somewhere else. So this is your cap situation. You're taking away $3.1 million, which is what you lose when you sign your draft class, and that can change based off trades. Could get better, could get worse. And really how we'll see that change the most would be whether the team trades up or the team trades down in the first 2 rounds. Because those are the picks where you have salary cap implications being much larger. So we see the first pick, it's $2.6 million. Second one's 1.25 or 1.2. And the rest of them are all roughly the same. So say they trade back, into, let's say the second round. Say they move back with the Steelers. Say, hypothetically, maybe the Steelers got a tackle. A good receiver's falling. They want to move up. Jacksonville trades in the early second. If they make a move like that, they go from 2.6 to 1.8. They would also have other picks they would accumulate, but those picks wouldn't have much cap change. So maybe the Jaguars save, a few $100 or a few $100,000, that is. So that's possible that number changes, but it's pretty close to that, regardless of trades. So in this scenario, and I think this is realistic for what they would do, you would have like $5.3 million available. And then you got enough money after the draft if you want to bring in a guy like Justin Houston. And you're probably looking at, I think you could get him on the same deal he got last year. He got $3.5 million with Baltimore. So let's say we sign him for that. So you're investing $6 million into your edge rushers. After that move, you're sitting around 2.6, 2.7 million that you're carrying over into the next year. So the cap situation's fine for this season. You're still able to make a couple moves. These are moves I could definitely see. I think DeJuan Smoot will be back with this team, and I think they invest in another pass rusher. And then we'll talk about 2024 here. Kind of go through these contracts. We're not even going to talk about cutting players as much, but I want to show that because of the route they've taken, you can bring back all these guys. This isn't just a this offseason thing where, or more so, I guess what I'm trying to say, this offseason, what they've done, they shouldn't have to do it next offseason. That's what I'm trying to get at. I think next offseason they have the money to retain everyone if they decide to. And they could even make a couple moves if they want, because you can backload deals. So, you guys got any questions as we go? Definitely make sure to ask. Doesn't even have to be on topic. We can get as off topic as you want with the Jaguars. Really don't mind. But with that said, we're going to start looking at 2024 here. So the salary cap is projected to go up. We're probably looking at it being around $256 million. Now, the number could be very different. However, the projection from this last year, it was like $200,000 off what was expected. So it was pretty close. So if they get it anywhere near close again, this is what we're working with. So a lot more cap space. It's going to keep going up because, well, we all know it. We all live in the world. Inflation exists in this country. Prices are going up. and money is less valuable. So you're going to see the cap space in the NFL get impacted by that. It's just a fact of the matter. So you're going to see this price shoot up around this number. Heading in the next offseason, they would have $52.5 million available in this scenario. That's after investing $6 million or so into your edge rushers and making your draft selections. Now, as far as what they've got here, we'll talk about players they could cut after, but we're going to talk about retaining guys. So, first thing, I don't think that you're going to see any contracts from this season change. So I don't think, like, if you see Evan Ingram get extended, that this first year cap hit will go down, because I don't think there's any reason for that, unless the Jaguars just have like a bunch of plans together where they need to clear a bunch of cap this season. So I think this likely stays the same, and where you see the small cap hit year is going to be in 2024, which is a big deal because you've got $52.5 million available, and even though you got all these guys to worry about, your cap hits aren't going to be that big. So let's look at Evan Ingram. Right now, we really don't know what he's going to get paid. If he gets extended with this team, I could see it be a massive range for what he wants. And I think there's even a chance that he does not stay with the Jaguars past this next season. From what I gather, and this isn't anything like I have sources on or that, it's more so just my observation. One of the complaints that Evan Ingram made was that he plays as a slot receiver a lot of time on the field. He even plays out wide. And we'll look at that with snap counts just to kind of show that he's not just a tight end. He functions as a receiver for this team a lot too. So we look at his snaps by position. He lined up in line quite a bit. So you saw him this is more so like if he's going to be a blocker or function as that. Not completely versed in that, but this is more so the alignment for a tight end. He ran that less than half of his snaps. He also ran in the slot, so you saw him play there. You saw him even play out wide. 187 snaps in the season. He was averaging every single game almost 10 snaps out there. So his argument, because of that, is that he is not just a tight end. He should not just be getting paid like a tight end does. And I agree with you, Ben. I don't think he's getting what he expects to get because he's still a tight end. And ultimately, his career has only revived because he went to a team that knew how to use tight ends and had the quarterback to do it. Like, Jacksonville holds cards in this scenario. So I think that it can really range, or the range can be really big on what Evan Ingram gets paid or demands to get paid to stay with the team. Because the base is like $11.5 million, right? Because that's what he's getting paid this year on the salary cap. It's like $11.345 million. However, what if he says, hey, I play outside as a wide receiver. I play tight end a little bit, and I play slot. If you're averaging out what those positions make, and especially considering what you paid Christian Kirk, I want to make what he does. What if he says he wants 17 or 18 million a year? I don't think he should make that. Like, I just don't think he has the grounds to stand on in the National Football League right now to do it. But I feel like he's very entrenched in that. And this might be one of those negotiations that really determines what the tight end market's going to look like. Because, yeah, I mean, while it did crash this offseason, I think he's one of those players that can try to demand more money than what most tight ends are making. At the same time, though, it's like, I mean, we'll look at, for example, what the highest paid tight end makes, which I don't even know if it's not even Travis Kelce. You got $17 million with Darren Waller. That is quite a bit, but most of them are like $15 to $14 million. So he's going to ask for a lot of money. That seems to be the way things are going, unfortunately. And on kind of a different topic, and you tell me how you feel about this. I would almost like, and this is probably my top option in the draft, assuming that you don't have someone awesome fall to you at 24 that shouldn't be there. I would draft Dalton Kincaid at 24 because I think you're getting a player that is a Zach Ertz clone. He looks the exact same, apart from wearing 86 and the red and black like he's done in Arizona. You're getting a player that's so similar to that, fits into the offense. He's exactly what Doug Peterson's going to look for in a tight end. And it's not necessarily just replacing Evan Ingram because, well, you could go down that road and say, hey, we don't need you and let him go. And he's going to go to another team and probably play worse, realistically. I think you could also see it where Evan Ingram does stick around, gets a decent deal that's fair to the team and to him, and you have two tight ends like you had in Philadelphia. I think that's something that Doug Peterson wants to use. You're opening up the playbook for him to have that, and that's a good use of a selection. I would argue that. I think the way that he plays the game, Kincaid that is extremely impressive, and it absolutely warrants a first-round pick. And yeah, Darnell Washington's great too. I really like him. He's one of my top tight ends, and he's right there. The only thing that really makes me not get huge on him going to Jacksonville is because I don't think he's the best fit for what Doug Peterson's going to want in a tight end. Now, Trent Baalke, dude's going to fall in love with him. I mean, he probably already has by this point because he's like, oh, he's 6'7" and this big. Like, that's ridiculous. Look at this highlight reel he had at the combine, this one catch he made. Like, he's going to love that stuff. But you look at like Doug Peterson offenses with tight ends, he doesn't really use blocking a ton. He uses them as receivers. He just goes all out with that. So I think Kincaid fits better for what Doug Peterson needs. But those two tight ends I'd rank really close in general to each other. I think they're right there with each other. And then you even got Michael Mayer in the mix. But I think that the upside is with Kincaid and Washington over what Mayer has. So I could be dead wrong. But if we're bringing back Evan Ingram, we're probably talking about $13 million a year or less. I do not think this team should be paying him anything over that. If it's a little over, I can live with it, but I don't think it's right. So the contract we're going to project is $13 million. So the way we format these, just to explain that, we're backloading the deal. We do that with all of our deals on here. So you have flexibility with the cap space if you need to make moves that year. So you have the opportunity and you already carry over the extra cap you have. So what we do is we take the amount he's earning per year minus the first year's base salary. That's the signing bonus. And that will really set up this deal. So that number would be, I believe, that amount. Oh, there we go. So $11,790,000. You add that with the base salary here, you have $13 million. So he gets paid that the first year because the signing bonus, while it's spread across the cap multiple seasons, it is all paid upfront to the player. And then you got the base salary here ends that year, so he's getting the $13 million, but you got $5 million against the cap. And then you're doing $13 million base salary the next 2 years. And then you've got the bonus that you prorated over all these seasons. So these are your cap hits. So we bring back Evan Ingram. Changes the cap a little bit, but you still got stuff to work with. And I'll also explain this cap space here too, because there's some things that are not accounted. For one, it's the amount we carry over. And for two, it's the amount that the draft class is going to cost from 2023. Because on here, you got 33 players. You've got 9 more that you add on from 2023. So at this point, there's 42 guys on here. Your cap space would be this amount plus the 2.7 million that you carry over, and then minus what your draft class costs, which I would estimate is like 12.5 million. So roughly take away 10 million from this amount, and that's what your cap space is before free agency and before the draft in 2024. And you're probably talking about $3 or $4 million that you got to save to sign your rookie class. You know, when you factor in what you gain, what you lose. So let's consider it like this: take out, let's say, $14 million just to play it safe. So we have to have at least $14 million left here to where we're good. Yeah, I'll read this comment, Ben. So you're saying, I get what you're saying, but using that rationale, you could say that Doug Peterson doesn't value wide receivers since his wideouts in Philadelphia were pretty mediocre. I think Doug works his offense around the players he has. And that's true. His receiving cores in Philadelphia were not that great, for sure. I think you look at like Jacksonville's right now, with signing Calvin Ridley, that really was a change from what he had done as a head coach before. Because, I mean, if we looked at the Eagles receivers in 2017, yeah, Nelson Aguilar, if I remember, Alshon Jeffrey actually was all right that year. And then Mac Hollins, Shelton Gibson. It really wasn't a lot going on there. Like, it wasn't a great receiving core. So you're right on that. But we have seen him continue to have these groups of tight ends. That's what he pursues, whether it's two of them or one of them. He likes that kind of tight end. He's proven that. I think with the receivers, they knew last year they had to invest in that because the receiving core was just so barren at that point. You had Marvin Jones. You knew that for sure. Christian Kirk, I think they liked the role that he could play. I think they liked him as a leader, so they spent on him. And really before the season, you could consider his value maybe close to what the top receiver was in Philadelphia that year. And then you're talking about, I guess, comparing Zay Jones to one of these guys. And Zay Jones is, right now, a solid starting receiver. He's not like great. He's not among the best, but he's a solid receiver. And the Calvin Ridley move, I think, was something that they did because they were really worried that it was not going to be enough with just watching the team. So I think that's more so what it comes down to, was them seeing what the results were and knowing that they had not done enough for the organization at that point. So that would be my argument against that, but I definitely get what you're saying there. I think the Ridley move was really the change from precedence for him. And maybe that comes down more to the way Trent Baalke wants to construct a team as well. So going back here, we got Evan Ingram back under contract. We're going to look at Josh Allen now, and this is one that could really change. We don't know exactly what he's going to get paid right now. My estimation is probably a 3-year contract. We'll look at the edge position here. So looking at other ends that are kind of around his value, you may be talking about guys in this range, that 15 or so million up to, maybe 17 or 18. I don't think he's making 20 million a year right now based off his production. He'll make a decent amount, but it's not going to be like record breaking or anything like that because he's a good defensive end right now. And he's a good fit for the team. It makes sense for him to stick around here. So we're going to go with saying this will be 17 million a year, 51 million over 3 years. Let's just use that for example. So to get our signing bonus, it's going to be that amount because you add this with the base salary of the first year, that's 17 million. And then we'll update these base salaries. You see the cap hit is about $6.5 million that first year. So you bring in Josh Allen. So 2 of your big free agents. Now you look at your other guys. Trey Herndon, you could bring him back again, but I think he'll walk by that point because realistically what happens is he gets replaced as a starter in the draft. He doesn't see the field a ton, and he wants an opportunity to play with another team. That's what I would expect from Herndon. So we'll talk about Tyler Shatley. And maybe this is a point where he retires. He's getting older as a player, but don't necessarily expect that. I think you'll probably see about the same deal he had before, which if I recall was around $3 million a year. So we'll see what it says here. It should show us on Spot Rack, or we can just click on him. Okay, 2.4 million a year. So we'll increase it a little bit because I know they value him a lot. Say it's 54 or 5.4 million. Go with that number. So each year is 2.7 million against the cap. So if you do that, you get your 2.7 million. He gets paid the first year, and then you got your base salary here. First year is guaranteed. Second year is not. You could cut him on that. That's probably the kind of deal you could get with him. So we bring back Tyler Shatley. And we're really going to go through all these small players too, most of them at least, because I want it to be shown what the real number is rather than just going after 3 big guys, because the salary cap does change from all these small deals. It will impact it. Now talking about Calvin Ridley. Just going to say it before we do it. We're not going to get close on this number most likely. We don't know how good he's going to play. But let's say he has a pretty good year. He earns a decent contract with the team. He's a little bit better than Christian Kirk. And you're talking about $21 million a year. So if we did that, and if you're changing it a little bit, it won't impact the cap number the first year too much. But let's say that's what he gets paid. And I know I could be really far off on that, but let's estimate that amount just for the sake of it. So you go with that. You still got effectively about 17 million you're working with. You have 45 players under contract at this point. And then you've still got, I'm sure, probably 6 guys you're going to re-sign from this list. You're looking at Devon Hamilton next. Him and Ben Barch, it really depends on how good they play this year. What I'll have him estimated at right now is about $4.5 million, just to get a number in there. And, you know, a lot of this is estimation. But I just want to show generally what the number is to really show the cap situation. So let's say it's $4.5 million. So his signing bonus will be that. Gets you to that $4.5 million mark the first year. So you backload it like all your contracts. Do the same thing here. So let's do a 2-year deal as well. So this will be... Might have got the other one wrong. I'll have to double check that here. I think I did. Yeah, it's a little off on one of these. It's close enough. It's a matter of like tens of thousands, which doesn't impact the cap too much. So that's where you're sitting with those guys. Chaseon's probably gone at this point. Yeah, the deals... So you got to kind of think about it this way. A lot of these players could get signed this offseason, right? So you can see, talking about like Evan Ingram, he could get extended. Josh Allen could get extended. I don't think Calvin Ridley does, but he's 30 years old next offseason. So he's an older player at that point. Not crazy old. Still probably in the prime of his career. But you're probably not signing him to 4 years at that point. Probably going about 3. And then Ben Barch and Devon Hamilton, those could be like 3-year deals, but we'll go with 2 on here because we really don't know like the status of those players at the end of the year. A lot of these numbers could just be kind of off for that reason. So that's kind of the thinking behind that. So Chaseon, probably gone. Tavon Campo, it's not a big impact on the cap. Don't even know if he'll stick around. And you got to consider there's 9 more players on the team at this point. He could be relegated so far that he's not on the top 51. Blake Hance, I wouldn't worry about. Michael Dogby, maybe. But we're going to get, say, how many picks do they have in 2024? Let's see. Because we want to get 51 minus the amount of picks that they have. So they trade, okay, that's 2023. So they'll lose that second, realistically, if they re-sign Calvin Ridley. So they'll have a first, a third, another third from compensatory, a fourth, and then they'll have their 5th, and then they'll have 3 6th, and a 7th. Yeah, 9 picks. You got it there. So basically, one of the seconds moves to a 3rd, and they have 2 extra 6th-round selections, assuming that the Arden Key compensatory pick sticks around. So we need to have 42 players under contract. So we'll sign 4 more guys. Looking through this list just to do that pretty simply here, Dearness Johnson, come back with the team. I do imagine that happens. I think he'll completely outplay his contract. That's actually something I want to talk about here. After we get these guys done, I want to go over those deals because we finally got details on them. Let's say he performs pretty well. They pay him a solid amount. Let's actually, you know what? Let's say he does really good. So say he has a great season as a backup. Jermichael Hasty got like 3.5 million, or no, it was 3.2 million over 2 seasons. Let's say with Dearness Johnson that he's getting 2 million a year. Say he outplays him a little bit. So your signing bonus, like 875,000, gets you to the 2 million mark. And you got your base salary here. So you bring him back. We got 39 players now. We're still trying to get to 42. Riley Patterson's going to stick. Shaquille Quarterman, I think he's going to come back. I think he's probably going to be a guy you're going to see as a depth player for a very long time on this team. So say they sign him for, let's do 2 years because he's a depth guy. They're probably not going to want to sign long-term deals past that in case, they break out as players because you don't want to limit what you can earn. So let's say with Shaquille Quarterman, he gets, say, $4.5 million over 2 years. Might be a little too high. But if that's the number, then that's probably what you're looking at, Cap. It's $4.5 million over 2 seasons. You got one more player we'll bring back. So that'll be Jamal Agnew off this list. So he's getting paid right now $4.75 million a year. He just made the Pro Bowl. Plays great as a return man. I think he's due to earn a little more than what he got before, despite not being a huge receiving threat on the team. So let's say $5.5 million a year. So that number you're going to use here, let's say it's a 3-year deal, because he's still a younger player. I think he's 27 in this or 29 in this offseason. So this is 2024. He's still got a lot of years behind him. So this number here would be that. And we throw in these base salaries. Now you're sitting at this amount for cap space that first year. Lock him up for 3 years. You pay him almost $1 million more a season. I think that's a pretty fair deal to him. So now we evaluate where the team is. Your only losses that are, I think, notable here. Trey Herndon, perhaps, like he's a good backup for the team. Chason, you would probably have to consider him a bust at least by this point. And then just some depth guys. That's really all you've lost at this point on the team. So nothing big. Considering our effective cap space, you have probably about $5 million left you can spend that's not tied up into the draft. So you have more cap space available. You've got all your guys back. This includes Evan Ingram. And I think there's a lot more money available if the Jaguars were to move on from him or another player, which I think Ingram's probably the most likely of this list. I expect Josh Allen to stay here, Calvin Ridley to stay here, and all these other guys, maybe they hit the market, but I think they could stick around. So you've still got extra money. You got a little bit you can spend, and what you have to consider for the team too is I highly doubt the Jaguars are looking at this cap space and thinking that it's going to be $256 million next year. I bet they're planning for it to be around the same number. And that's probably some of the reason why they haven't went out and spent big this offseason, because they're trying to make sure that they can stick under what the cap space could be again next season. So just some thoughts there. Now, you've also got opportunities in here. This is important to note, to either move money down the road again or to release players. I think maybe Cam Robinson is someone that the team wants to move on from at that point. That's possible. Don't know if I'd call that because right now they have the 2 tackles, but that's a potential idea they could have. I think Williams sticks around. Kirk will obviously stick around. But Rayshawn Jenkins, you could see him have a worse year next year, or just not be able to follow up the hype. That's $9 million you save. Talking about Robinson, that's almost $20 million. You've got money that you would save from releasing Brandon Scherf if you wanted to, if you felt like that was a good move to make. And that really depends on whether or not he plays great this next year. Is he going to get better as a player? And you could also look at Lorenzo Fatukasi even still. I think he's an option. Don't think Zay Jones will be on that list, but you've got options to save money and make moves. So it's a lot more open the next offseason. I think you see the Jaguars be more active. Because they're either going to be a Super Bowl champion trying to defend it, or a team that came up short again and is wanting to find a way to improve and get to that next level. And yeah, Ben, I'd agree. I think it's very likely that they draft a tackle at some point early in this draft. I don't know if it's first round. I think that really comes down to the kind of tackle available and whether that guy fell or not, like how high they are on the board. Because they are pretty high on some other players in the first round too. I mean, I would almost say, I think it's more likely they draft Torrance than they draft a tackle. They still hit offensive line, but they could go that direction. Because they might see Torrance as a guy that could play right tackle if needed. Whether or not you believe that. And that's really all you need. You don't need a guy who can play left tackle. You need a right tackle, because if Cam Robinson goes down, you just move Walker Little to the left. And if Walker Little goes down, well, then you're missing your right tackle. So that's what they've got to find. They've got to find a guy that could come in and start at right tackle if needed. So maybe Torrance ends up being that guy in the first round. You could also see them go after one of the middle round guys, maybe a Matthew Bergeron, or even Cody Mock, perhaps. If they go for it later, Wanya Morris would be a good option. I think that's definitely available to them. As long as it's not past the third round. At that point, it could get a little more difficult. And yeah, Mock could be a guy they like. I can't remember my notes on him. Actually, I can look at this big board and see what I had on him, because I haven't visited Mock a whole lot. He might be kind of low on here, actually. No, 57. So that's right where they would pick in terms of value. Just the selection after. He's a pretty physical guy. I do remember that. Age was an issue with him, but I think you could see them go that route. He seemed to move pretty dang well, which is important. And you want to find a good balance of that. And you could argue that it might be kind of hard to find a tackle like that after the first round, because I look at guys like, for example, Jalen Duncan, that people are high on, and while he can move really well, the guy just does not seem to have the functional strength to do it. That's a big concern to me with him. And so, I have him pretty low on my board. I think he's like a late third, if I remember correctly. And I'll have to update this too. Yeah, he's at 90 for me. Not a very highly ranked player. I think they should definitely look to go tackle. So, out of curiosity for everyone in here, who do you guys right now, out of all the options in the draft, who do you want the most? It could be first round selection, second round selection, really anywhere. Who are your favorite players? Maybe we can talk about them. If you've got any other questions as well, let me know. We can keep streaming for a little bit. I've got all the time in the world tonight. No work tomorrow morning, so that's something I'll look forward to until 3 o'clock when I actually have to go to work. But I know for me, I said it earlier, but I think Kincaid would be fantastic in the first round, because I think regardless of what happens with Ingram, you have a good draft pick that's going to be a really good player in the NFL and fit what Doug Peterson wants to do. So probably be him. Torrance would be another one I like. I'm hoping that like Miles Murphy, Broderick Jones, or Nolan Smith falls down the board. That could be pretty nice too. I think those would be pretty good selections. But yeah. Yeah, Washington. I would not be mad one bit if they got him. I really wouldn't. And it would be exciting to me because it would show that Doug Peterson could work with that kind of tight end. And what is enticing about that too is imagining a head coach that's this good with tight ends working with a very unique prospect like Washington. And when I watch him, a lot of what I see is this play that's very similar to Travis Kelce. I think he plays a very similar kind of game. Now his size is a little bigger, and as a pass catcher, like he's got more work to do. He's a guy that didn't do it a whole lot in college, but when you saw him catch the ball, you saw these amazing grabs. Like you saw it in the combine. You know, everyone saw the one play where he's going down the sideline and makes a catch off his body. As a guy that large, that's truly special for what Washington offers. That'd be fantastic. And Branch, I mean, if you're looking for a slot corner, and you consider slot corner the biggest need on this team going into the draft, by those definitions, for the 2023 season, Brian Branch would be the absolute best pick you can make because then you're hitting your biggest need with the best player for it the first season. So you could make an argument that Branch is the absolute best player that they could pick at 24, just based off that. But I think you also got to look at the future past this next season. And Billy, what tight end do you like? Do you have any like preference out of them? Okay, there we go. Washington. Yeah. Well, same thing here again. Washington would be fantastic. Just, I don't know if it's going to be something Peterson goes after. I could see Balky trying to convince him. The other big factor is they can't wear number 0. Maybe that plays into it because certain someone stole it. Calvin Ridley, which I thought Devin Lloyd was going to wear it at first, but it's sad. He's going to keep wearing 33, which it's okay. And then Pickens, Zach Pickens, I'm assuming you're talking about. Is that right, Ben? I'm assuming that's the guy, because George Pickens isn't in this draft. That's why I always think of when I see that last name, because of last offseason. It's like the wide receiver you knew was going to be great in the NFL, but he's probably going to like be on drugs and in prison like 4 years down the road. It's like, do you want to pick him or not? That's kind of how I saw him last offseason. But yeah, Zach Pickens would be a pretty dang solid selection, you know, say in like the 3rd or 4th round. Those would be really cool guys to go after. Him, Moro Ajamo, be another nice guy they could get on the defensive line. They'll have some good options at that position at that point in the draft. I just hope that the team looks to address the pass rush in free agency so that they don't have to address it in the draft. And it's fine if they do. Like, I mean, even with our scenario here, say these are their additions. You bring in Smoot, you bring him back. You have Arden Key. Arden Key getting replaced by Justin Houston. So you have basically roughly the same group from last year. You have one guy getting replaced. If Nolan Smith is on the board at 24, that's a great pick still. It doesn't keep you from selecting him because these are 1-year contracts for all of these players. Justin Houston's 34 that season. So getting Nolan Smith still like a speed rusher like that, which he's really the definition of a speed rusher in this class, that would still very much be on the board, but it doesn't make it to where, like, if you get someone in free agency to address that position, you don't have to go reach down the board for someone, which is what I want them to do. I want them to set it up so they don't have to go select someone who's not the best player available in their opinion. And their opinion will probably differ a little bit. Last year I got lucky because I wanted Devin Lloyd in the first round. I sat down with my brother watching the draft, and I told him before it started, that's the guy I wanted. And thank God they got him. Obviously, the first year wasn't fantastic, but I think it was still pretty good, and I think he's a guy on the upturn. And we got Billy here saying, after years of watching bad picks, I would love to see the Jaguars make good picks for the team. For sure. If we could just draft like we did in 2021 every season, I'd take that. I think we'd probably win 4 Super Bowls straight at least, because that draft class was just ridiculous. And that's a ton of the core on the team right now. They really hit every selection. You could argue until the 5th or 6th round, because even J2 Faley in the 4th, he started for Cincinnati. They should have kept him around in Jacksonville, but he did do that. And yeah, they are going to have to address it wherever they do it. That has to happen this offseason. And I do think, it's not guaranteed Allen's back after next year. I expect him to be extended or get his first real contract outside of the rookie deal or the 5th-year option before the season starts. I think they will lock him up because he's a really important part on that defense. There's something I was going to get to. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. But yeah, I would agree on a lot of those guys would be pretty cool for the team. It's just a matter of whether they'd select him or not. I do remember what I was going to say now. One guy that went up my board a little bit recently just because of watching film on him and also some of the stuff he said at the Combine was Clark Phillips. And I'm praying that Clark Phillips falls to the 2nd pick for this team, because I think that would be amazing for a selection. Well, you've got concerns about his size as a guy who's 5'9" according to his Combine measurements. He is still an extremely talented, battle-tested player, and he's got his head on straight. He's not going to be crazy dude to bring into the locker room, and he's from Utah. I think that is a plus right now, at least for these next couple of years, getting players from there after what they went through the previous season. Everything we learned when we signed Devin Lloyd and people watched the stuff on him. That's a team that's went through a lot of adversity, and I think they're producing really great players right now because of that. Clark Phillips is one of them. I think he'd be a huge leader on the defense, and he's a perfect candidate for the slot right off the bat, and he's a guy you can move outside in the long term. So I'm kind of hoping that he falls, because I think that would be a fantastic selection. Now, I'll ask this. I know it probably is a no, because most people aren't going to live around here. But we got anyone here who's interested in going to the draft this year? Looking into that? I'm going to take time off this next month because I'm just an hour north of Kansas City. So I can attend the draft. I just got to get time off from work. But I plan to be there. So maybe I'll record some stuff from the draft. That'll be pretty fun. But yeah, I hope, I think if I'm getting what I want, I'm getting Dalton Kincaid from Utah. And not just because he's from Utah, but because I think he's the best tight end in the class, it being close with Washington. And then getting Clark Phillips in the 2nd rounder. Maybe Tyreek Stevenson. And yeah, someday they're going to have to bring the draft down to Jacksonville. I mean, we're like the face of the NFL draft right now. They'll change, after this offseason ends and future ones ensue, because this isn't going to be a team that's going to be selecting in the top 10. But, I mean, the last 2 years, it's teal everything, man. We're picking first every dang draft, it seems like, after never doing it before in franchise history. Yeah, I'm excited to go. I'm not excited about the $45 draft hats, though, but I've got to buy one. I have to do it. I'm going to it. It'll be interesting to see how close we can get to, because I don't know if anyone's looked at how much it costs to get an actual draft day package, But if you want to attend all 3 days and be like a part of the broadcast and like with the group of fans there, it's like $4,200. It is expensive to go out to the draft, unfortunately. But you can also go for free if you're just not taking part in all of that. You can watch from far away. That's what I'm going to do because I don't have $4,200 sitting around. When did they have it in Dallas? Out of curiosity. It might have been a while back, but yeah, I'm excited to attend it. The draft is probably my favorite time of the year, other than obviously watching the Jaguars win football games. I think why I enjoy it the most is because you really see the future of every team take shape. Like when we drafted Trevor Lawrence, you know that's a move that's going to impact the next 15 to 20 years. Like it means the most. And then, you know, you've got other moves like getting to see Devin Lloyd drafted. Like that was really fun for me because I wanted him that whole night. And I know that probably won't happen again, but I was pretty lucky that night. I got everything I wanted in that draft. So 4 years ago would have been the 2019 NFL draft. So you saw Josh Allen get selected then. And then what would be Juwan Taylor as well, right? Those have been the 2 selections you watched, assuming you made it to all days in the draft. So I know they were the same year because Allen was talking to him. 2018. Oh, okay. So you had to watch them pass on Lamar Jackson. That's bad. Yeah, I was sitting in my living room watching the draft, watching Lamar fall down the board, and just sitting there being like, just don't be complacent. Like, just go make the move. He's clearly going to be a good quarterback. You can sit him. His last name's Jackson. It's Jacksonville. Like, it makes too much sense. And then they picked Taven Bryan and ruined my life. You know, from there on out, everything's just crumbled because of them. But yeah, that was a frustrating draft to watch, for sure. I was hoping for a lot more, but sometimes that happens. Sometimes it's just a bad draft. But well, if we don't got anything else in here, if you guys got any last questions, throw them in. But we'll probably wrap up the stream here. I will be back. Yeah, it was bad. I'll be back on here on Wednesday night, I believe. I'll be talking with another guy that is going to be starting up his YouTube channel here soon, so we'll have him on, and we'll be talking about the NFL draft, be talking about draft prospects, so definitely bring in guys that you're interested in. You know, maybe we'll watch a little bit of film or just look at our breakdowns on them. Like I said earlier, that's my favorite thing to really talk about. You know, I love the draft, and so we're going to talk about that quite a bit. And so if you got time on Wednesday night, definitely make sure to make it for that one. We'll have 2 of us here, so the more the merrier. We'll also have other videos out here soon. I will say this. If any of you guys got an idea for an April Fool's video for tomorrow, because I'm probably going to make one here tonight, and I'm hoping I don't anger too many people or people recognize it's a joke, but if you have an idea, let me know, because I've been trying to bounce them around in my head. I've been thinking about maybe I know Josh Allen getting traded, or that one might not be a good idea, but perhaps it's got to be something that's not too believable, so that no one actually flips out. Because I don't want to ruin someone's day, but I just want to give that big jump scare for 5 or 10 seconds. So if you got ideas, definitely let me know. But I got to figure that out tonight. So with that said, though, I appreciate you guys watching tonight. It's been a fun one. Appreciate everyone who talked. We've got the draft coming up soon. March dang today. We've got the 27th is when it starts, so not that long out until we're going to see who the Jaguars are selecting and know a heck of a lot more about where this team is going to be in the future. So it should be really exciting. But with that said, appreciate y'all watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And finally,